Welcome back to michaelalbany.com and Michael Albany Photography for part 3 of our Photomatix and CS4 Photoshop HDR image tutorial. This one, what we're going to do, we've already added some layers, a vibrance layer, a curves layer, and a high pass filter to our image. And we're going to go in now, and you see we have a very high contrasting, very uber sharpening HDR image, which almost looks surrealish, unreal, but real. We've gone ahead and we've applied these different layers. Now our curves layer, which we're still on from part 2, again, you can click on your little icon here when you have that layer selected. You go in here and you can have it just to pay attention to the layer directly below it, which I like to do, but that's entirely up to you if you want to do it. We go back in here, and then we're going to go into our Create Hue Saturation Adjustment layer. Now you notice that over here we had our Create Vibrance Adjustment layer, and in our Vibrant Adjustment layer, if we create a new one, we have a saturation point. We're going to actually throw that away. We don't need that because we have our vibrance here and we played with saturation a bit. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our layers, adjustment layers, and we're going to select Hue and Adjustment. And in this point, we also have an opportunity to do saturation. Previously, the vibrance layer did very subtle changes to just the vibrance layers and the vibrance portions. Here, we actually can saturate all our different colors. We can change our master colors, reds, yellows, greens, cyans, blues, magentas, whatever you want. I think in this case what we need to do is we need to probably come in and play with our reds just a little bit. If we crank them up, we get really orangey. But if we crank them down a little bit, not too much, just to about a minus 19 or a minus 20. Again, if we bring it up, down. Very subtle difference, but I like it. It kind of takes that edge out of the sky and or the halos around the sky. We could go in and change our yellows, which we do have quite a bit of yellow in this particular image. We crank it up, it gets very, very golden. If we bring it down a little bit, we still have that saturation of color overall, but our yellows are toned down to a more realistic, a more earthy, surreal color. We get a good reflection in the wetness in the down here on the sidewalk, and where it's dry over here we get a good saturation. Our stone actually looks like stone instead of something too awfully yellow. We could go in here and actually change our side and just kind of pull this around if we wanted to. Bring this over to reds and all the way over here, all the way over the blues or things like that. We're going to just pretty much leave that where it is. It's 75%, 105%, or degrees rather. And we can play with that all day if we wanted to, and do it to your taste if you want to change it at all. The only other thing that we want to do now is we want to make sure that we have our background layer selected, and we want to go in and we want to click on Filter. And again, I use Noiseware Professional. Any Noiseware program that you have is going to work a little bit better than Photoshop because that's their main focus. That's the only way they're going to sell you a plugin, is if it works better than Photoshop. I prefer Noiseware Professional, Noise Ninja, any of the above. They all work very, very well. We're going to sit here. Our biggest noise problem is in our sky, so we're going to bring this down and look at our sky and see what it does. And see how that smooths out our sky, but that's probably a little bit too much. So we're going to go down and we're going to do the default. Oop, helps if I hit the right thing. We do default, and you can see that's before and that's after. Before, after. It is affecting some of the noise in the building, but I don't think so much as to a negative effect, because we do have our high contrast, our high pass filter, which is going to bring in a lot of this sharpness. So we're going to click OK, and it'll take a moment for Noiseware to apply those settings to the actual image that we were working with, the 16-bit TIFF. And I think you'll notice that we have a pretty good image. A lot of our noise up here is gone. If we click and zoom into this area, helps if I enlarge our screen enough to actually see it. Still some noise in there, but looks pretty good. Our edges are very sharp across our building. We could go in and mask this out and mask out that particular area and only apply a noise selection to that. But if you're going to do that, make sure that you go in and after you've selected it, feather your selection. You want to make sure that any selection that you choose is feathered up here on the toolbar by, depending on, it's a matter of what image you're working with. If you're working with an image that's 3,000 pixels across, a feathering of 2 or 4 is not going to make a difference. However, if you're working on an image that's only, say, 800 by, 600, then yes, 4 or 6 is going to be plenty. So adjust that according to the image that you're using. And then what we can do is we'll go back and look at our image again, and I think it looks pretty good. Now, the first thing we're going to do is, what is our use for this image? Well, we're not sure yet, so we're just going to do a save as, and we're going to call this tone mapped 2. Because that, or we could go in and do tone mapped underscore Photoshop, PSD, Photoshopped, and we save it. And that'll save our image, and we have it as we want it. We get our TIFF options. We're just going to accept the defaults for expedition purposes, but basically what it'll do is it'll save our image as our raw quote-unquote TIFF, and it'll save all our layers and things like that, or we could save it as a PSD, however you want. Another thing that we have the option to do is create it into a smart object and move it into other images. You know what you can do with images. There's a lot you can do with it. We could go in and reduce the size. We could change the image size down to, from what I found for me, works on my website best, if I change this to percent and go with 25%, click OK. It'll take a moment to shrink that down because it's a lot of data in a TIFF. And you'll notice that even at this size, it's only 76%, but it makes it a little bit easier to save for the web, and our image is only going to be, 641K. Not bad at all. And we click cancel because we're not going to do that right now. But there you go. You have an image that you've taken from raw files, from NEFs in my case. We've taken it into Photomatix. We've looked at all the menus on the main tone mapping page. We saved it as a 16-bit TIFF. We automatically opened it up in Photoshop. We did a few more tweaks with some layers of vibrance, curves, hue, saturation, and we applied a high-pass filter to give it a little extra punch. And then we saved it as a TIFF image or a PSD or however you want to save it. And we've gone over this whole image, and you've just created an HDR image. It's a wonderful way to get some really good looking images for your website or for your work, however you want to do it. It's a lot of fun, but remember, it's all up to you. It's the look you want. It's what you want to do. These tutorials I do are just to show you all the different tools that you have available. I hope you had a good time. I hope you enjoyed our 3-point series. I hope you are going to watch this and pass it on to your friends. And in the meantime, keep an eye open at michaelalbany.com to see more. I hope you're having a great day, and until next time, happy shooting!